I knew it was going to be one of those days the moment I saw her Tamara Prescott marching down the sidewalk, like she owned the whole damn neighborhood. Clipboard in hand, fake pearl necklace bouncing with every angry step, and that permanent sour expression like someone just told her Starbucks stopped selling pumpkin spice. I was in the front yard, washing down the driveway after trimming the hedges, when she stopped at the edge of my lawn. Her eyes locked on my new retractable hose reel mounted to the side of the house. It was a sleek rig, not cheap either, got it on sale, but still cost me a couple $100. My pride and joy for weekend yard work. "You know, Marcus Keller," she said, drawing out my full name like I'd committed a felony, "those hoses aren't HOA compliant, they clutter the property view." I turned down the water pressure and looked at her. "It's mounted neat, doesn't extend past the house line." I checked the guidelines. Tamara's eyes narrowed. "It's unsightly to the community aesthetic." "Then maybe don't look at it, Tamara." She huffed, scribbled something on her clipboard, and stormed off without another word. I figured that was the end of it. Just another HOA tantrum. But I should have known better. Tamara didn't let things go. Especially not when she was head of the HOA's Visual Standards Committee, which she basically invented so she could boss people around. 2 days later, I came home from work to find the hose lying in the dirt. The reel had been sawed clean off the mount, the hose itself sliced halfway through. Looked like someone took garden shears to it in a hurry. I stood there, stunned. Then I noticed the little slip of paper tucked under a rock near the steps. It was an HOA violation notice, handwritten, signed by Tamara herself. "Unauthorized accessory removed due to non-compliance. You may retrieve it from the community center shed." I laughed out loud. Tamara Prescott had actually trespassed on my property, cut my hose, and stole the reel like she was doing me a favor. My neighbor, Greg, walked over when he saw me standing there. "Dude," he said, "you gotta check your security cam. That was this morning." I saw her here with those giant pruning scissors she always carries around like she's Edward Scissorhands. I didn't wait. I pulled up the footage from the corner camera I'd installed last year after someone dinged my mailbox. And there she was, Tamara, 9:43 a.m., walking straight onto my lawn, yanking on the hose reel, cursing up a storm, then hacking at it like she was trimming a hedge. No hesitation. No warning. Just Karen-level rage. I saved the footage to a flash drive, already planning my next move. Because if Tamara thought cutting my hose was gonna scare me into submission, she had no idea who she was messing with. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of anger, though I had plenty of that, but because I was busy digging through every county ordinance, HOA bylaw, and civil code I could get my hands on. I wasn't just planning to confront Tamara, I was going to make this public, humiliating and airtight. The next morning, I took the flash drive with the footage and a printed copy of the HOA's own property guidelines down to the local precinct. I knew a few officers there, thanks to my years working in city planning before I switched over to independent contracting. The front desk officer, a younger guy named Reynolds, recognized me right away. I explained the situation calmly and handed him the evidence. He watched about 30 seconds of the footage before letting out a low whistle. "She just walked up and destroyed your property? Didn't even knock." "All right," he said, already pulling out the report form. "That's criminal trespass, destruction of property, and possibly theft since she took it with her." "You want to press charges?" "Absolutely." While he filed the paperwork, I called my attorney, Angela Whitmore. We'd worked together on several zoning disputes back in the day. She was sharp, relentless, and allergic to losing. She'd once gotten a developer fined over $70,000 for mislabeling a drainage easement. When I told her what happened, she paused only long enough to ask 2 questions. "You have the footage. And has she admitted to any of it?" "Yes," I said. "And yes, she left a handwritten note claiming she removed it for non-compliance." "Well," Angela said, her voice practically humming with anticipation, "let's see how she enjoys getting served." By noon, I had the police report, a case number, and a printed copy of the footage with a timestamp. Reynolds promised they'd follow up within the week. Meanwhile, I took a detour to the community center. The front desk volunteer, an older man named Lou, pointed me to the maintenance shed where confiscated items were supposedly kept. I had to unlock the padlock myself, since no one official was around. Inside, I found my hose reel tossed in a corner under a broken folding chair and some bags of old mulch. It was in worse shape than I'd thought. The casing was cracked, the reel mechanism jammed, the mounting bracket bent out of shape. I took photos from every angle. When I got back home, Greg was out front trimming his rose bushes. He looked up as I hauled the destroyed reel out of my truck bed. "She didn't even try to hide it, huh?" "Nope, just stuffed it in a corner like yard trash." Classic Prescott. "What are you gonna do now?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent Angela the photos and the police report. Then I walked inside and emailed the HOA board, not Tamara, directly requesting a formal hearing regarding the damage and the theft of my property. I wasn't expecting a reply until the next board meeting, but by that evening I got an automatic notice. Emergency HOA hearing scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse. Apparently, someone was nervous. The meeting room was packed. Word had gotten out. Tamara stood at the front, arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they looked like a paper cut. The rest of the board, 4 other homeowners who mostly kept their heads down when she went on one of her power trips, looked uncomfortable. I brought a printed copy of the HOA guidelines, the police report, photos of the damage, and a USB stick with the footage. I also brought Angela. She wasn't required for the hearing, but her presence alone changed the tone in the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I laid out the facts step by step while Angela handed out copies of the evidence. Tamara interrupted twice. The hose reel was an eyesore. Angela held up a hand. "Ma'am, if you speak again before the presentation is concluded, I will consider that obstruction. And we are well within grounds to escalate this beyond civil court." Tamara sat down. By the time we played the video full screen, crystal clear with audio, the room was dead silent. You could hear her muttering as she yanked the hose free, using both hands to wrench the bolts loose, and then clumsily clipping the line with her oversized shears. It looked like a toddler trying to break into a safe with a hammer. Angela closed the laptop and turned to the board. "We are seeking $2,500 in property damage, trespass-related punitive fees, and emotional distress. If this board fails to act in accordance with your own charter, we will file directly with the county court and pursue full damages, plus legal fees." Board member Cynthia, who usually just nodded through Tamara's rants, was the first to speak. This is just obviously wrong," she said. "Tamara, you went onto his property without permission." Tamara's voice cracked. "I thought we had the right to enforce compliance. You're not law enforcement," said another board member, a retired firefighter named Leo. "You're not even supposed to step onto someone's lot without a notice and approval. You didn't even give him 24 hours. The vote was unanimous. Tamara was suspended from all committee positions pending investigation. The board also issued a written admission of fault and agreed to cover the full cost of damages. But Angela wasn't done. The next morning, she filed a small claims suit anyway, not for the money, but to make the case public record. And more importantly, to ensure there was a documented precedent that Tamara Prescott had willfully violated property boundaries and caused physical damage. By Friday, I got a call from Officer Reynolds. "Well, she came in this morning," he said. "Didn't take it well. Tried to claim she was performing her duties. And she's been formally charged. Court appearance is scheduled for next month. Should be a quick one." I didn't say anything for a second. I just leaned back on the porch, looking out over my freshly washed driveway, now with a brand new stainless steel hose reel installed, this time with tamper-proof bolts and a discrete motion sensor cam pointed right at it. Greg wandered over with a 6-pack. He handed me one without saying a word. "Think she'll show up again?" he finally asked. "If she does," I said, cracking open the can, "she'll be on camera, on record, and on borrowed time." The following weeks shifted the entire rhythm of the neighborhood. You could feel it in the way people walked their dogs, less heads down, more eye contact. Lawn chairs appeared on front porches again. Even the Thompson kids started playing kickball in the cul-de-sac without their mother nervously scanning for clipboard patrols. Tamara's suspension sent a ripple through Greystone Pines, and for the first time in years, people were talking about the HOA instead of fearing it. But then, something strange happened. A man in a navy suit started showing up on our street during the mid-afternoon. Not a neighbor. Didn't walk a dog, didn't carry a rake, didn't wave. Just parked his silver sedan near the corner, got out, and took photos of houses, mailboxes, and driveways. Sometimes he scribbled something into a black notebook. Once, I caught him aiming a camera at my backyard from the sidewalk. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I waited until he circled the block for the third time in a week. I happened to be working in the garage, reorganizing my tool chest when he pulled up again. "Looking for someone?" I asked, stepping to the edge of the driveway. He didn't flinch. "Just conducting a property survey," says who. He reached into his blazer and handed me a business card. It read Everstone Compliance Solutions Private Planning Consultant. I turned it over. Blank. "Planning what exactly?" He adjusted his tie. "Your HOA retained us to assist with long-term neighborhood compliance. We're identifying properties that may need visual restructuring." I stared at him, then down at the camera hanging from his neck. "You're not with the city?" "No, sir. We're a private firm." I handed the card back. "Then you're trespassing if you step onto my property again, and if I catch you photographing my windows, I'll report it as stalking." He gave a polite nod and left without another word. That night I called Angela again. She requested the HOA's financial records under the transparency clause in the bylaws, a clause most residents didn't even know existed. The board had 21 days to comply. Angela also contacted the county office to check for any pending land use filings. 3 days later, she called me back. "They paid that firm over $12,000 last quarter," she said. "And here's the kicker, they used discretionary funds slotted for emergency maintenance." "For what? Cracked sidewalks and potholes." "Exactly. Which haven't been touched in months, by the way. And the county, no permits filed, but I did find something else. There's a revised zoning variance request dated 6 weeks ago, filed under Greystone Pines Homeowners Association. It's a request to reclassify common green space into developmental lots." I sat in silence, letting that sink in. "They're trying to sell part of the park," I said. "Not just sell it, develop it, which means they're prepping properties for increased value." "That's likely why they hired the firm to document infractions and pressure homeowners into upgrades." I exhaled slowly. Tamara wasn't just being petty, she was laying groundwork. Angela's voice turned serious. "This is deeper than a broken hose, Marcus. They're misappropriating funds and manipulating property values. That's fraud." The next day, I printed a flyer. It was simple, just a headline in bold. "Did the HOA fine you recently? You might be owed money." Below it, I listed a time and date for a neighborhood meeting. No accusations, no inflammatory language, just a request for stories. I taped one to every mailbox between Maple Drive and Sycamore Court. When Thursday evening rolled around, I set up folding chairs in Greg's garage, larger space than mine, and brought a stack of blank forms. 36 people showed up, some curious, some skeptical, but most just tired of being pushed around. "I got fined for a flower box," said a woman named Dana. "A flower box." Said it was unapproved landscaping. "My mailbox got flagged for paint chipping," said Mr. Patel, who ran a dry cleaning shop downtown. "It's black. What is there to chip?" One by one, the stories came out. A pattern emerged: random violations, sudden inspections, vague threats of liens. People were getting fined for things that hadn't changed in years. Angela stood at the back, silently taking notes. When the last person spoke, I stepped up. They've been inflating fines, diverting funds, and setting us up for a rezoning push. The evidence is building. If we work together, we can challenge the board, trigger a forensic audit, and shut down whatever this is before it bulldozes our park. Someone asked if that was even legal. Angela answered, "It's not only legal, it's necessary. And if we file a class action, we can demand a full accounting and suspend the board pending investigation." That night, 42 residents signed on. The next morning, I submitted a formal petition to the HOA board, backed by signatures representing over 60% of the neighborhood. It triggered an emergency election clause, forcing a freeze on all discretionary spending and suspending board voting power pending review. Tamara's name didn't appear on any of the board's responses. She'd gone quiet since the criminal charges, but her fingerprints were all over the financial trail. Then, 2 weeks later, everything exploded. A former board treasurer, Howard Finch, contacted Angela directly. He'd been removed 6 months ago by Tamara for inactivity. What he actually did was question a line item labeled Community Initiative Grants. When he pressed for details, Tamara accused him of insubordination and forced a vote to replace him. He still had copies of the original budgets. Turns out, Community Initiative Grants was a shell category. The funds were moved into a private account under the HOA's tax ID, then funneled to Everstone Compliance Solutions. Over $28,000 had disappeared over 18 months. Angela turned the documents over to the district attorney. The investigation moved fast, faster than anyone expected. 3 board members were subpoenaed. Everstone's founder was served at his downtown office. Tamara was arrested at her house while watering her front lawn, still wearing her fake pearls. The charges included embezzlement, misuse of public funds, falsifying records, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The footage of her trespassing on my property, originally just a small personal win, was now part of a larger pattern of abuse. The DA submitted it as evidence of habitual misconduct by a person in a position of power. I didn't need to testify. The paper trail spoke loud enough. By the end of the month, the court ordered a full audit of the HOA's finances dating back 5 years. A state-appointed trustee took over administrative duties in the interim, and the neighborhood voted to dissolve the current board entirely. We held new elections on the community center lawn. No robes, no gavels, no clipboards. Just folding tables, handwritten ballots, and a grill going in the background. I didn't run. But I helped reformat the bylaws to prevent unilateral spending, require member approval for all outside contracts, and mandate quarterly public budget reviews. Tamara pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for restitution, and a 5-year ban from holding any position of authority in a registered association. The park, still untouched. No development. Just kids playing, dogs running, and a retired guy named Benny who now leads Saturday yoga under the trees. As for me, I still have the new hose reel. It's spotless, works like a charm. And every time I water the lawn, I think about how a single act of petty sabotage unraveled a whole network of corruption. Funny how things grow when you water them right. The first full board meeting under the new administration took place on a warm Saturday morning at the community center's open-air patio. No raised platform, no power suits, just a long, folding table, pitchers of lemonade, and a crowd of residents seated in mismatched lawn chairs. I stood in the back, content to observe while sipping coffee from a paper cup. The air felt different. Not just because Tamara was gone, but because people were finally being heard. Angela had stayed involved, not as legal counsel anymore, but as a volunteer advisor while the new board learned the ropes. She sat at the end of the table, quietly flipping through a thick binder filled with revised documentation protocols, vendor approval procedures, and a hard cap on discretionary spending. Every page had been reviewed by the county auditor. After the new treasurer presented the quarter's spending summary, less than 1/3 of what the last board had blown through, Angela leaned toward the microphone. We've also completed the restitution process. All improperly levied fines have been refunded or credited, and those who were overcharged for compliance inspections will receive formal letters of apology, along with reimbursement. Applause broke out across the patio. Even old Mr. Dawson, who rarely said anything louder than a grumble, tapped his cane on the pavement in approval. I turned to leave just as someone touched my arm. It was Greg, holding his phone out. "You seen this?" he asked. On his screen was a local news article. Headline: HOA fraud probe leads to new state guidelines. The story detailed how the Greystone Pines case had triggered a legislative review of oversight gaps in homeowner associations. A state senator had introduced a bill requiring third-party audits for any HOA managing over 50 properties, a direct result of the Everstone scandal. "Guess this thing got bigger than we thought," Greg said. "Good," I replied. "Means they can't just hide behind bylaws anymore." As I walked home, I noticed something strange. The grass in the common area, once patchy and overgrown, had been carefully reseeded. A few saplings lined the walking path, and a new bench had been installed near the edge of the pond. No fanfare, no signage, just quiet improvements. That afternoon, I got a call from Officer Reynolds. His tone was different, brisk, serious. "Marcus, we need you to come down to the station. There's something you should see." When I arrived, he led me to a small room where a detective I hadn't met before introduced herself as Lieutenant Callahan. She didn't waste time. When we executed the subpoena on Everstone's financials, we found a secondary ledger. It wasn't turned over voluntarily. One of their interns flagged it anonymously. She opened a case folder and slid it across the table. Inside were photocopies of checks made out to GPH Advisory Services, an account that didn't legally exist. "That's a shell entity," Callahan said. We traced it to a P.O. box linked to Tamara's cousin, the same cousin listed as a consultant on several expense reports filed by the HOA. "So she funneled the money to her own family?" I asked. "Worse. We believe some of it was laundered through fake invoices for services never performed. Landscaping, inspection, even pest control, all fabricated. Several of those checks were deposited into a joint account Tamara shared with him. How much are we talking? Nearly $90,000. The number didn't land immediately. I stared at the folder, trying to reconcile it with the HOA president who used to scold kids for riding bikes on the sidewalk. It wasn't just corruption, it was calculated, organized theft. "She's looking at felony charges," Reynolds added. "Multiple counts." And her cousins already agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. I left the station in a daze. That night, I sat on my porch with the old hose reel, the broken one I'd kept in the garage ever since the incident. I hadn't looked at it in weeks. It was rusted now, the plastic casing still cracked from where Tamara had hacked into it. I set it down on the porch table and stared at it until the sun dipped behind the trees. The next morning, I donated it to the community center's Neighborhood Hall of Shame. They were setting up a display in the storage corridor, artifacts from the HOA's darker days. The reel sat beside a copy of the forged inspection sheet and a framed still from the security footage that started it all. Greg joked that we should add a plaque. The $2,500 mistake that opened Pandora's box. Angela stopped by as I was leaving. "Got a minute?" she asked, holding a manila envelope. Inside were copies of the final restitution checks, the court order against Tamara, and a letter from the Attorney General's office. It confirmed that Greystone Pines had been removed from the list of flagged communities under active investigation. The case was officially closed. "You did more than fix a hose," she said. "You set a precedent." I didn't know what to say. "Not everyone would have followed through," she continued. Most people would have replaced the thing and moved on, but you made it impossible to ignore. I nodded, then handed her back the envelope. "Keep it," she said. "You earned it." Spring turned to summer, and Greystone Pines came alive in a way it hadn't in years. The annual picnic, once canceled due to budget constraints, returned in full swing. Kids ran through sprinklers, local bands played on a makeshift stage, and a barbecue pit smoked from dawn to dusk. I kept a low profile that day, content to man the lemonade stand with Greg. But during the raffle, the new board president, a schoolteacher named Leela, grabbed the mic. "Before we wrap things up," she said, "we'd like to recognize someone who reminded us that no one's above accountability and that even the smallest acts can spark real change. Marcus Keller, come on up." I tried to wave it off, but the crowd started clapping. Even old Mr. Dawson stood up. They handed me a small plaque, nothing fancy. Just a wooden base with a metal plate that read, "In gratitude for holding the line." I stood there, holding it, while the breeze rustled through the trees. The same trees Tamara tried to rezone into concrete, the same trees that now shaded the kids chasing bubbles across the grass. Later, as the sun went down and the crowd thinned out, I walked back home along the sidewalk where it all began. The spot where she first stopped to judge my hose. The spot where, months ago, I had no idea what I was about to uncover. Now, the house had a new coat of paint, a fresh coat. Not because anyone told me to, but because I finally felt like it. Funny thing. The reel I installed after the whole incident, still working perfectly, not a scratch on it, and this time no one dared touch it.